Are you feeling adventurous? You look like you're feeling pretty adventurous. Am I right? Excellent. I too am feeling pretty adventurous today, and I was hoping that you could join me for a tale of tales, a story about animals going on a really big adventure. It's called The Frog Who Wanted to See the Sea. Just like Tales and Tales, stories about animals, See the Sea is a homophone. There are two different words that sound exactly the same, see the sea, but they mean two different things. See means to look, S-E-E, see. See, S-E-A, means the ocean. So they sound the same, but they mean two different things. Let's dive in and take a closer look at The Frog Who Wanted to See the Sea by Guy Billout. Once there was a frog named Alice who lived in a little pond. Alice knew every inch of the pond's murky bottom and every hiding place among the reeds. She knew, too, that she could swim from one side to the other with 28 kicks of her back legs. That is a very precise-minded frog. On warm afternoons, dragonflies appeared out of nowhere and settled on the cattails at the edge of the pond. I love dragonflies. They peered at Alice with their big mirror eyes before zipping away. Alice watched them and wondered where they went. In the winter, Alice saw seagulls circling high above her pond. She loved watching them wheel, but they always vanished as spring approached. Alice wondered why. So already we know that Alice is a very curious frog, full of interesting questions. Where do dragonflies zip off to? Where do the gulls go every spring? I wonder where that curiosity will lead her. One morning, feeling strangely courageous, the little frog asked a seagull about the world beyond the cattails. This curious frog amused the bird, who patiently described all that he had seen. The towering mountains, the big gray cities, the airplanes flying in the clouds. He finished by telling her of the sea, how he flew there in spring for food, and how one could not see the other side. It was so big. So, it is bigger than the pond? Asked Alice, her eyes wide. Much, much bigger, said the seagull. Alice tried to picture such a large pond. She wondered how many kicks it would take to swim from one side to the other. Well, we know it takes her 28 kicks to swim from one side of her pond to the other side. If it takes 28 kicks to get across a little teeny tiny pond, how many kicks do you think it would take to get across a giant sea or ocean? One morning, the gulls were gone. It was spring. Several days later, Alice made up her mind. She was going to see the sea. She was going to look at the ocean. The seagull had explained to Alice how he followed the river to the sea. Carrying a rolled-up lily pad, she set off through the woods and fields, stopping only to hide when she heard a prowling owl. Whoo! 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 Or a fox. At dawn, she reached the river. That is one courageous frog. Alice had never seen so much water and was frightened by its movement. That's interesting. Do you think the pond where Alice is from is very fast moving, or is it very, very still? I think it's probably very still. Ponds tend to be very still, but not rivers. Oh no, rivers are going places. Where are they going? Rivers are going to the sea. That's why the seagull follows the river all the way out to the sea, because all rivers eventually lead to the ocean. Summoning all her courage, she hopped into the rapid current, using her lily pad as a raft. Good thinking, Frog. She sure is courageous. Alice enjoyed the ride. She was happy to see some familiar faces later in the day. A pair of dragonflies came skimming over the water to peer at the strange traveler, and a turtle on the riverbank stretched its neck to watch her pass. Before Alice knew it, the sun had set, and she crouched down to sleep. Alice was woken the next day by a great splashing. She had barely opened her eyes when a big fish flew out of the water and disappeared behind a wooden wall. When Alice saw the fish again, it was in the grip of a hand. The hand lowered the fish to the water, and with a snap of its tail, the fish dove from sight. Alice hoped to stay unseen, but a voice asked, "What's this?" And she was lifted out of the water, raft and all. Alice found herself looking into the eyes of an old man. "So, my young friend, where are you off to this fine morning?" he asked. Alice was afraid. The old man was holding a sharp hook tied to a long pole. But she spoke up, and she told him that she was off to the sea. Off to see the sea, I should say. The old man smiled at this. He admired Alice's adventurous spirit. Me too. But he knew well that the sea was no place for a little frog on a lily pad. With a twinkle in his eye, he drew a tiny vial from his pocket. "May your journey be safe," he said, handing the bottle to Alice. "But if you should find yourself in trouble, this might be handy." He said no more, but gently set Alice and her raft onto the current. Alice called back her thanks to the kindly fisherman. "Thank you." She had no idea what was in the vial or how it could be of help, but she tucked it safely away under her body. Alice saw many strange and wonderful things that day, including a weathered castle atop a green hill, and a city with buildings large and small. As day turned into night, Alice caught a few gnats for dinner and then fell asleep, dreaming that she was flying with the gulls. What a beautiful dream, especially for a frog. How would you like to fly on the back of a gull over the ocean? I would do it. I would do it in a heartbeat. If there is a giant bird that I could sit on top of and we could fly together, sign me up. I'd be really excited about that. In fact, it might be my greatest of all dreams. I guess I have a lot in common with this frog. When Alice awoke the next morning, all she could see was blue. She looked in every direction for green riverbanks. In a moment of both joy and fright, she realized that she had reached the sea. She made it. She made it to the sea. It's really interesting what it says here, though. It was a moment of both joy, really, really good feelings, and fright, really, really not so good feelings. So her adventure was a mixture of joy and fright. Usually those things are opposites, right? But in her special experience, they came together. I think that's pretty interesting. Can you think of a time that you felt really, really happy, but also a little bit scared or nervous? Maybe you were trying something new for the very first time. How did it feel to mix joy and fear? Feeling happy and feeling a little bit scared. How did it feel to put those together? Did it feel like an adventure? Alice croaked softly. Ribbit? Her voice sounded tiny on the empty water. After a moment, she croaked louder. Ribbit! The only reply was a gust of wind that blew across the surface of the water. Making Alice's lily pad twirl in a tight circle. She called out a third time, louder still, Ribbit! And the blue of the sky was slowly overtaken by dark, roiling clouds. The wind began to howl. Alice was terrified. She thought about swimming for shore, but didn't know which way to go. Suddenly, a wave rose up and up and up, so big that it seemed the sea had grown a mouth. Alice was sure she was going to be swallowed. At the last moment, however, she remembered the fisherman's vial. Good thinking. As soon as she opened the little bottle, the great wave crashed down, and the patch of sea that carried Alice's raft became absolutely calm. The storm raged all around her, yet she remained dry and safe. Good thing she had that vial from the fisherman. By the time the moon hung low in the sky, the wind and waves were gone. Floating quietly in the middle of nowhere, Alice thought about the many things she had seen beyond the cattails. Yet now she found herself tired, lost, and alone. She longed to be swimming in her pond, diving among the reeds. And she began to cry. Big frog tears. Frog tears. Frog tears. Frog tears. What's the matter? A soft voice asked. Alice looked around with wide eyes. but saw no one. When the voice asked again, she looked up at the moon. "I don't belong here," she cried. I rode the river. I saw the ships and people and cities. I reached the sea, but now I want to go back home." At that, the moon's reflection on the water seemed to move towards Alice, as if it were a hand reaching out to help. It stopped next to the little frog's lily pad, and the voice whispered, "Come with me. I know the way well." Alice paddled into the middle of the yellow reflection. She watched and waited, but nothing happened. At last she lowered her eyes. Surely she had only imagined the voice. What she saw next, however, made her croak with delight. "Ribbit!" She was in the middle of her pond. There were the reeds and the cattails, the treetops just beyond, and the shore barely a dozen kicks away. She dove into the water with a joyful splash and swam all night in the moonlight. As the spring days grew longer, Alice began to feel restless again. Occasionally, birds and animals would visit, but they were always on the move and quickly disappeared. One night, she could not sleep, and for the 100th time since her return, she thought of the moon. Spring drifted away, and summer arrived, and then, one night, Alice disappeared for the second time. She was never seen in the little pond ever again. Where did she go? What's she doing there? She traveled back to the sea, and she's surfing one of those big waves on her lily pad raft/surfboard. That is one courageous, adventurous, and very brave frog. I would like to be like her. Yeah, I consider this frog a real role model of having an adventurous spirit and being brave. Do you think that you would like to go on big adventures? What kind of adventures would you like to have? What can you do to make your adventures real? What can you do to bring them into your real life? Well, if you ever go on your big adventure, I hope you'll come back and tell me all about it. Because there's really nothing quite like a great adventure story. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as I have. Lots more great books, or should I say lots more great tales and tales to look forward to all summer long, coming to you from the Palmer Public Library. And me, Mr. Dan. Bye for now.